my name is Lauren Hughes. I am the PBIS coach at Prudence Crandall, and Mr. Sills and I had the idea that maybe it would be beneficial to put some sort of behavior videos out that would give us some tips and strategies that you can utilize on the home front while you kind of embark on this distance learning journey. I know this is really stressful for everybody involved, and no one is discounting that. And we really just want to be the best supports possible for you and your family and give you some tips and strategies. So the idea for these videos is to kind of go through a scope and sequence of different strategies that we do utilize within the school to help manage the behaviors for our students and to show you how that can be transferred into the home. I'm really going to give you more of a broad overview of these strategies just because I want to kind of see, based on the feedback from you parents when you email me or if you want to comment on the video, that I can see what more content you want a deeper dive into. So the primary focus of this week's video is really to increase that structure and predictability for your kids at home by giving you some tools to create a schedule, a successful environment for your child to be working in, as well as how to acknowledge them when they're doing the appropriate thing to kind of increase the likelihood that those positive behaviors will continue to happen. The great part about this is that all of these strategies that I'm going to be giving you that are going to be beneficial during the distance learning time and when you're trying to get your kids to do work, they can be translated to anything. They are effective at managing any behaviors that might come up during your normal day-to-day when you're not trying to teach your kids, which is great. The other great part is that there is no set in stone way to do this. I'm going to be giving you some key features to take into consideration for these strategies, but you really inevitably have to find out what works best for your family. We don't tell you, no one will tell you that, oh, you have to do a schedule where you have half-an-hour blocks for everything, or you need to be giving your kids tokens during the day to help them behave. You pick what works for you and do what's best. All right, so let's dive right in. So we're going to first start with the environment. So when we think about the environment that we're setting up for the kids during this distance learning time, it does not need to be a desk that you go out and purchase with tons of different nooks and crannies for them to put all their organizational materials in. I'm literally working at my kitchen table right now and I'm working fine. So it's really just making a designated space so that for when you get to work time, your kid knows, hey, it's time to start our work. So when we think about setting up that environment for our kids to be the most successful and not have a high likelihood of misbehaving or getting off task, we really want to make sure that there are no distractions in the area. So a big one would be electronics. So having a TV in the background or their cell phone sitting in the area so they can be texting their friends, probably not the best setup because, let's be honest, if I had my cell phone sitting right here while I was trying to do my work, it would probably be very distracting and easy for me to get off task. So same thing for the kids. We need to set up that environment where there aren't these things that will get them off track and make them be able to do the best work possible, and then they can go on to those distractions once they get their work done. The students should also have all of the materials that they might need for that assignment readily available. I know in the school day, the teachers always say they have different routines for when the kids are able to get up and get things for this exact reason. So kids are masters at finding ways to get distracted, and I'm sure you've noticed that through this whole journey, that they'll say, I need a pencil, or I need crayons, or I need this notebook, just so that they could get up from their desk. So making sure you have those items readily available. It could be a bag of items that you just put all of their notebooks, their pencils, their crayons, whatever that might be that they'll need. It does not need to be anything fancy. Just make sure that they have everything that they would need so they don't need to be getting up and back and forth and getting distracted and really interrupting that learning time. So the next part that I think is probably the most difficult, and I've even found this to be very difficult with some of the teachers within the building and making these schedules with their kids, is to allow time for adult supervision. So when we think of adult supervision, you might think, oh, do I have to watch my kid the entire time? That's not what we're saying. Just kind of being in that area can really be helpful in deterring those negative behaviors. Sometimes just kids knowing that you're sitting right there, maybe not necessarily watching them, they're like, ooh, mom or dad or grandpa or Uncle Joe can hear me. So I don't want to mess up. I want to make sure he sees me doing my work. So like I said before, I know that creating this adult supervision is probably the hardest part. So this is kind of going to bring us into our next section, which I'm going to talk about really creating those structures and routines for both you and your child. So when you're both trying to work in the same space during the same hours of the day, really creating some sort of routine or schedule might be super beneficial to make sure that your kids are doing the most work possible without really distracting you from your working from home duties. Okay, so why are routines and schedules so important? Your kid is used to each day having a very regimented schedule where it's almost to the minute, especially for specials, when they have to go to each place. So the more that we can create something similar where they kind of know what's coming next and it's more predictable for them, the more at ease it will make them, which will inevitably make it a more comfortable environment and hopefully really increase that work production. So how intense or loose you make your schedule for your kids really depends on the needs of your family. So if you're finding that you're trying to juggle multiple kids, trying to log onto the computer or trying to get their work done, or your kid is constantly asking, when can I go outside? When snack? These might be really good tells for you that your kid does need a more regimented schedule with times built in, like the one right here. Or maybe your kid's doing just fine and really just needs a little bit more structure, but not something so intense. So you could give them an example of a schedule kind of like this one, with just a simple list of order of events for the day. So before I move on to the next section, I'm just going to show you a quick visual of those key features of how to create the most successful environment, as well as building those schedules and routines for your families to help during this time. So from what I've heard from some families that I've talked to is that they're becoming very discouraged and frustrated because they feel like they're seeing more behaviors than they might have ever seen before in the household. Please don't be discouraged. This is to be expected. Things are way out of the norm for everyone right now and tensions are very high. So just the reminder that we're all doing the best we can and hopefully some of these strategies can kind of help with that moving forward. So sticking with this theme of being proactive and positive and really stacking the front end before behaviors occur, we're going to talk about acknowledgement. So acknowledging your kids whenever they are doing the right thing, or as we like to say at school sometimes, is caught them being good, right? So it's really important that we provide that positive praise and acknowledgement for when our kids are doing the right thing, as opposed to drawing more attention to them when they are doing the inappropriate or wrong thing. So this certainly does not mean that when your child does something that's inappropriate, no matter how severe or minor it might be, that you provide a praise statement such as, "You're such a good boy, but I don't like that you yelled at your sister." Because that can be really contradicting and confusing to kids. So when I talk about praise and doing that more often than correcting their misbehaviors, all I mean is you need to be giving them just as much acknowledgement, if not more, for when they do the right thing to really encourage them to keep doing that, instead of just calling them out anytime that they're doing those negative behaviors. So the whole thought process behind this is that we want to provide more attention and acknowledgement for the appropriate behavior than when they are engaging in that inappropriate behavior, because we do not want to ever accidentally reinforce them for doing the wrong thing, right? So when a kid actually gets a desirable outcome from doing an inappropriate behavior, so for example, if they want your attention and when they get that attention for yelling at you or fighting with their sibling, you might actually be strengthening the likelihood of that behavior happening again because, hey, they got your attention, whether it was negative or positive. A lot of times kids just want our attention so desperately that sometimes it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, which I know is a really difficult pill to swallow because you think, what? No kid wants to get reprimanded or corrected or told they're doing anything wrong. That should stop it, right? But it's actually not the case. For some kids, it might work, just one redirection, but for a lot of kids, if they're getting that attention for it, they might continue to do it more. So in a lot of my trainings that I do, throughout the district, what I like to always say to people is that we cannot force somebody, whether it's a student, an adult, whoever it might be, to do anything that we want. We can only make it more appealing for them to do so. So, for instance, by acknowledging them when they're doing the right thing, we are making that more appealing, that they are going to get our attention whenever they're doing the right thing, which is what we want. We want them to know that we appreciate them doing what we ask, following directions, working hard, and we don't want them to ever think that the way that they can get our attention is by doing something that's not appropriate socially. So when we're providing this praise, we really want to be as specific as possible. A high five or great job, those are all great things to say, but to really encourage the kid to be doing that behavior more in the future, you want to be super specific about what they did right. So if they worked really hard on their math assignment today, you can show them how excited and happy you are for them by just saying, great job working through that math problem. I know it was hard, so I really hope you keep that up through all the rest of your math. So by being super specific about the praise, as well as doing it in the moment when you see your kid doing what you want them to be doing, is really going to encourage them to continue doing that behavior that you want them to do in the future. So obviously, no matter how many positives and how much we stack that front end and how proactive we are, things fall apart, right? Kids are going to act up. That's just how they are. No one's perfect. So the next part I'm going to talk about is how do we really provide those corrections for when they engage in an inappropriate behavior. So when we're providing that correction, I know it's our first go-to is to say, stop that. What are you doing? No, stop. What? What are you doing? Stop, stop, stop. That's our first go-to. Don't be embarrassed. That's the normal, because it's very easy in that moment to just kind of tell your kid, stop doing that. I don't like that. So it can actually be far more effective to just simply state exactly in very specific terms what you want your child to be doing in a positive way, as opposed to just calling out whatever they're doing that's negative. It really helps foster a positive relationship with you, and it doesn't get you guys into a power struggle or cause any sort of arguments, and there's really no wiggle room of what your expectation is. I understand this is a very hard shift to make. It took me a while to just stop correcting them and saying what they were doing wrong or telling them to stop doing that, and shifting it more to telling them explicitly what I want them to be doing and being very specific. But it's actually incredibly effective to make that shift from the negative to more of the positive. A real life example of this might be if your child is having a difficult time with their math assignment and they start scribbling on their paper, maybe they just start tearing up the paper. Rather than immediately saying, stop that, what are you doing? Which is probably our go-to. It was mine at one point too. To also just kind of take a step back, really calm ourselves in a calm, very neutral tone with no emotion. Just kind of say, hey, I can see that you're very frustrated by your math assignment, but I need you to do your work appropriately and finish that math problem. Flipping that script and making it more positive, one, we're really helping ourselves remain calm in that moment, because we never want to add to the chaos, right? Our job is to be the models of how to handle our frustrations appropriately. Two, you're acknowledging that there's emotion and that they're feeling frustrated, because that's normal. It's okay to be frustrated. It's also a lot less confrontational and really stops those power struggles or arguments that you might be having with your kids to get them to continue doing their work. So just to kind of sum up this section, I'm going to put a little visual here of the key features of how to provide that praise and acknowledgement for when our kids are doing the appropriate behaviors and what we expect of them. And then just a quick example of how we would provide that error correction, where we kind of flip from the negative to more of the positive by stating explicitly what we want to see them doing. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope that you can take some of these tools and strategies and utilize them at home with your kids to hopefully help make this distant learning journey a little bit more easy for you. But I just want to remind you, this is hard for everyone. The teachers, the staff, everybody is having a difficult time trying to navigate this, and everybody just keep doing the best you can and make sure that you're taking care of yourselves and your families, because that is honestly the most important thing during this time. I'm going to put my contact information at the end of this video, so please, if you have any questions that you would like more information on, any of the content that really kind of hit home for you and you would like me to kind of talk about next time, or one of my future videos that I have going on, please let me know, and I'm always here to help.